bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go.
EAGLES, Eagles.
That is what we're here to talk about today. EAGLES, Eagles. Mac and Mac on Birds 365. John McMullen, Happy New Year.
Yeah, how about that? New league year officially starts. All the talk can turn into actual moves and transactions. Yeah, exciting day around the NFL. Although you know what happened.
Exactly. They made it into a less exciting day with legal tampering, legal negotiation, call whatever the hell you want. Takes a little of the starch out of the actual New Year's at 4:00. But you can't complain if you think your team is doing well. And if you're an Eagle fan, I think you've got to believe that overall. We could sit here, oh, they still haven't gotten a linebacker. You're right. But they've added some superior talent to this football team. The latest of which came down yesterday, the return of CJGJ, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, is back with the Eagles on a 3-year contract, which in and of itself has actually been kind of strange because no one has leaked out the actual numbers yet. All I've seen, John, is upwards of $33 million. Well, you could say upwards of every contract that you get. He's got upwards means something, which means it's not necessarily $33 million, but there could be incentives tied into it, and you need to see the actual structure of the contract. We'll figure that out over time. Somebody will give the actual numbers, but just the fact that they got him back is big. And here's my question for you, because you use this phrase often, that the Eagles are disciplined, that they have their way of doing business, they have their valuations, and they stick to them, and they hold strong to those valuations. They've gone damn close to top of market for 3 different players, a running back, a safety, and an edge rusher. That is not usually the way of the Eagles doing things. Different philosophy. These players were so good they couldn't help themselves. If you disagree with my philosophy overall, tell me, but I think the numbers speak for themselves. Why do you think we've gotten a less disciplined Eagles team in roster building this year?
I don't think it's less disciplined. I would argue it's not top of the market except for running back. The running back is top of the market, but if you look at edge rushers as a whole, that's a very valuable contract. If Bryce Hupp turns into a big time pass rusher, everything's about how the player performs. But I always say about the Eagles, and I'm very confident, and the Saquon Barkley numbers are out today. It's very Eagles friendly. They don't sign bad contracts from a financial perspective. Now, in hindsight, as long as Howie Roseman's here, Jake Rosenberg, Bryce Young, you're not going to see a bad Eagles contract from their perspective. And again, the financial perspective. Now, if you fall flat on your face, yeah, in hindsight, it turns into a bad contract. But I'm saying in the moment, they don't sign bad contracts when compared to the rest of the league. I think that's continued with these 3 particular players. In the case of CJ Gardner-Johnson, when the numbers do come out, there's going to be tremendous incentives. It's going to be very team friendly. And that was one of the issues the Eagles were concerned about with CJ in the past when he left. Is he going to get paid big money and still perform and all that kind of stuff? And
what made them change their mind on this one?
Well,
the incentives are going to dictate that he's going to play hard.
Well, I don't even think it's about play. And that's a Jeff McMullen. So I didn't hear that specifically. That was Jeff. So I'll say, perhaps that was one of the reasons that the Eagles didn't want to go so drastically towards CJ Gardner-Johnson the first time. I can't confirm that, but it certainly makes sense. I think it comes in now that he's gone, and both sides, by the way. CJ said a lot of things when he was out leaving the door, and I think both sides, grass isn't always greener on the other end. The Eagles saw it and said, damn, we need a playmaker on the back end, and CJ made a bunch of stinking plays when he was here. So they missed him drastically. And then CJ went to Detroit. And it's funny because Landon Dickerson talked yesterday after signing his big money extension. And he said he talked to when he was asked about staying, he said he talked to people that have left and they tend to regret it because of the way the Eagles do business and first-class organization, yada, yada. And I think it was funny. Maybe that happened to CJ. Now he got hurt in Detroit. I mean, he basically had a Ponte Maddox season. He tore his pec in week 2, and he worked really, really hard. I think it was week 2 or week 3.
No, week 2, yeah.
And he worked really, really hard to get back at the end of the season. By that time, Detroit was cruising. The safeties were playing well. He played some slot, didn't play up to his standard like Avante, and maybe it didn't look good from Detroit, but you got to give him a lot of credit for working and coming back hard and coming back for that injury. So I think it's a grass isn't always greener thing from both sides. And they said, you know what? This really worked when it was here the first time. Let's run it back. And I think it's a good signing for the Eagles because they need that guy. He is a ball hawk. There's concerns over durability. He missed 5 games when he was here. And he missed most of the season last year before coming back for the final couple games and then the playoffs. So there's some concerns, but from a contract, and I went on a tangent, but from a contract standpoint, yeah, financially, the Eagles don't sign bad contracts. Even Saquon Barkley, as I said, the numbers come out. If he's a total flop, which I'm not a big fan of the signing, as I've said on the show, doesn't matter from a financial perspective. With the cap rising, it's not going to be a blip on the radar. But
yeah, I don't think you say that, John. And we'll see if they do anything in the next however many hours. And it's not like when 4 o'clock hits, shut it down. All the free agents are done. No, it's going to continue on. There were a couple of really, I think, good linebackers that were out there this year in Patrick Queen and Luvu, and they got neither one of them. And if you hadn't spent top of the market money for a running back, then you could have gone deep at the linebacker position. So you can say that the money doesn't affect. Well, they're in a capped world. And I think the Eagles are going to walk away with a secondary linebacker again, just like they did last year in free agency. And although you can't directly tie it, you can tangentially tie it that if you pick certain positions where you're going to go with a high value player, a high salary player in comparison to others at that position, it doesn't allow you to do it at every single position. So I think
no, and I actually in the moment I actually wrote about it on SI. I actually agree with you. In the moment, it might affect you budgetary wise, but the Eagles weren't involved with Patrick Queen. There's to them it's about evaluation, and that's what if they thought Patrick Queen was the outlier, like they think Saquon Barkley is the outlier running back, they would have went after him. They don't think of it that way. Now, when you start talking about the Lubus of the world, probably a little bit too expensive. But I thought there were a bunch of guys. Al Shair was one of them. Josie Jewell, Blake Cashman. All these guys would have been upgrades. Willie Gay. they all signed elsewhere, and they would have been budgetary. Wouldn't have been a restriction if they didn't sign Barkley. So you're right. Maybe potentially they didn't get a mid-level linebacker like that, but did they even want one? That's a legitimate point, though. I think you're right. It's a legitimate point. I'm talking long term, though. If Barkley flops, it's not going to matter from a salary. They're not going to be hurting down the road to move on from the contract, and that's what I meant from that. But while I say that, the Eagles want it both ways.
Yeah,
we're so smart, and we do this, and we do evaluation correctly. You're not getting that pass from me. If this player doesn't succeed, you're going to hear about it, at least from me, and others are going to say, I already saw Joe Banner out there. Oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it matters because 38% of the league over these 2 days has flipped over their running back situation. 38% of the league. And there's a lot of big name backs who signed for a lot less money. And if they're more productive, come on.
right.
I mean, that's part of it. That's part. You can't have it both ways. So if you're going to be, and I just did, I give the Eagles all the credit in the world typically for being disciplined and signing good contracts and doing all the right stuff financially. So when you go outside the box, don't give me that, oh, it's not going to matter.
Right.
They're already trying to float that out there.
That's where I thought you were going, and I'm going, no, I don't believe that. Now, I think Saquon's going to play very well, so he's going to be worth the contract that they gave him. But if they don't, yeah, you put money into the running back position, and you could have put it into another position like linebacker for me, because there were other good running backs, like you just said, who signed for lesser money. The top couple linebackers are all off the board now. So you're playing in the middle of the market at best for linebacker, and I think they have undervalued that position. And the CJ thing is a perfect example of Eagles and good news, bad news. Here's the good news. When the Eagles, in conjunction with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, decide to move away from each other, they both made that decision. The Eagles supposedly gave him a long-term contract offer last year, which long-term could be 2 years. If you're more than one, it's a long-term contract in some people's minds. And C.J. didn't like it. It wasn't good enough for him. He said no. So how he pivots and he kind of pushes Slay's hand and threatens to release him, and they get an extension done with them, and they decide to go for Bradbury rather than CJ. That was a dual decision, but the Eagles had as much to do with it as CJ did. It didn't work. Their replacements at safety this year didn't work. So I will tell you the Eagles made a bad decision last year by not being more aggressive to keep CJ Johnson. But here's how he gets credit. He'll admit mistakes. He won't be stubborn. He won't go, well, we made our call on CJ. He's not that good. We're not going back after him. No, they saw the safety play they got, and they said, yeah, maybe we should have gotten him done last year. Let's see if we can rectify that situation. And they did that with this contract. And that's, John, you've dealt with them. They're guys in the National Football League. They make a call. They take it to their grave. They're not going back. They're not reevaluating. We made the call. We're standing by it. That can get you fired. That can be the downturn of an entire individual's career and or a team's career on a short-term level. Eagles are not afraid when they make a call and it doesn't work out the way they thought it was going to work out. They're not afraid to fix it. They're not afraid to go back and reevaluate.
No, and that's
our player.
CJ's a perfect example of that. And as I said, I think it works in that particular instance. It's both sides, because CJ could have said that I'm not coming back to Philly. I'm not that. And so I think both sides saw, again, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they were right to do the 180. Look, they wanted, and you brought up the linebacker situation. Yeah. I don't think the Eagles wanted to go above Green Bay for Xavier McKinney, but that was their first option at safety. And, they didn't have enough. In that case, it's probably financial discipline more than wanting the budget money, but you never know. Maybe they wanted to go higher and said that we can't go higher. So that part does factor into all these things, but I agree with you. And they needed a playmaker at safety, and it was so deep on the free agent market at that particular position. You knew they were able to get one. Yeah, I'm still troubled at linebacker though. And Josina Anderson tweeted out last night the Eagles are still looking for a linebacker by hook or crook. So that took to me, maybe they're going to trade market. Maybe there's a young linebacker, maybe like DeAndre Swift last year at running back. Maybe they see a guy who they think can do something in the final year of his rookie deal that hasn't really panned out in their original city. Maybe they'll go that direction. Howie's got a lot of avenues to go through. But yeah, there were a number of those mid-level linebackers that I thought would have been a nice fit here, and they're all gone. They're all gone.
That does worry me a little bit, but all in all, I think the return of C.J. Gardner-Johnson is a big re-addition for the Philadelphia Eagles. And they made a couple other additions yesterday, solidified the special teams, bringing back their long snapper and their punter. And Braden Mann, by the way, earned a 2-year contract. Good on him. He had a really good year.
Great season. Yeah.
He had a really good season this year, and the Eagles, A, took care of him, and B, took care of themselves. But they also introduced their $86 million man?
84.
84, yeah. Sorry.
And there's a perfect example. See, Landon, and this is like the Carson Wentz deal way back in the day when the Eagles set the market. So right now he's the highest paid guard in the history of football, average annual value.
Mm-hmm.
But you've seen it explode already, the guard market on the NFL. In a couple of years, that's going to look good for the Eagles. It always does. And that's what people, how could you give that money to Carson Wentz? Well, it turns out it was really cost effective, but the player failed. So, that evaluation still matters more than anything. And you got to get the players right. Landon's a very good player. And I think people that harp on, he's got the biggest guard contract. I mean, that's the moment. That's how it works. That's a snapshot in time. It's his turn. The next guard's going to get more than him. The next big time Pro Bowl level guard's going to get more than him. That's just the way it works.
Right. The best example of what you're talking about. There was a minute, and I'm not all that far. I'm using hyperbole, but not by much. I think Jalen Hurts was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL for about 30 hours.
Yeah.
Because shortly thereafter, Lamar Jackson signed, and he was the highest paid quarterback for about 3 days. And then shortly thereafter, Justin Herbert signed, and he became the And then 2 weeks later, Joe Burrow signed. And, they just continue to top each other. And Landon will be the number one guard for a while, and he could be proud of that. But you're right. At some point, somebody else is going to come along, and the team is going to value him even more than Landon Dickerson. All right, he's McMullen. I'm McDonald. You got Mac and Mac here. I'm Birds 365. We got two good guests coming your way. In hour number 2, Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News is going to come on. You said you thought he was the first one that said it was official, Saquon Barkley?
Not official. He was the first one to say the Eagles had significant interest, and everyone looked and said, really? And Pat's got a really good personal relationship with Saquon. So that's the one that made me say, Pat's saying it. Maybe there's something to it. And I still didn't think the Eagles would go to $12 million. But I mean, he was the first one, and he was the one where I said, all right, we got to start taking this a little bit more seriously. But even then, I'm going to be honest, even then I didn't believe it. Yeah.
So Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News is going to jump in on hour number 2. Certainly talk about the Barkley situation, but I'm hearing people say, the Giants, they got Brian Bird, the Birds. The Giants are winners in this offseason.
Brian Bird's a good player, man. Now, they had to pay him a ton, and you got to give up significant draft capital on top of it. But Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, who I like, Kayvon Thibodeau started to turn the corner last year. He's immensely talented. That looks good on paper, man. That looks good on paper.
It does. You want to say that's fine. They replaced Xavier McKinney yet? I don't think so. Do you think Singletary's going to be Saquon Barkley-like for them? I don't think so. I don't think the Giants have done all that much. They've kind of moved some pieces around, but I don't know that they've improved the football team, and they're in a spot where it's no guarantee they're going to get a top quarterback.
2 days. We're not even. This is the first day of the new league year. I mean,
John, how many let's grade the free agent moves so far columns have you seen?
Well, that's all you can do, but it's also silly. Is all I'm trying to point out, because there's a million moves.
Did Sports Illustrated ask you to get silly? Because I saw about 20 of them. Okay.
They do
Well, then
not.
be thankful they haven't asked you.
I push
Yeah,
back.
that's what we do. That's what fans want.
I get it. But I'll say it. I'll say individual moves. And I know we got to get to Martin. He's in the green room. I'll say I like individual moves. I don't like individual moves, but yeah, I mean, grades at this point are silly. Hey, I say mock drafts. Mock drafts before free agency are the stupidest things in the history of mankind.
But
you got people saying Atlanta's going to trade up to get Jaden Daniels. Oh, are they? Not anymore. You dummies.
I understand. I agree. Maybe it's because I can comprehend it and go, this isn't where you get that this isn't written in stone. We do it today. We do it tomorrow. We do it the day after. Things change. Signings happen. Guys leave teams. In the moment, you can look at it. And I've seen a couple in the moments. Ooh, the Giants are doing real well. I just don't agree. And we'll discuss that with Pat Leonard. That's hour number 2. More importantly, hour number 1 is Eagles Talk with McMullen, McDonald, and the man. Martin Frank, Delaware News Journal, joins us next here on Birds 365.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services. The first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Mac and Mac here with you on Birds 365. Thanks for streaming in with us, Eagle fans. It is a I said Happy New Year to John. I got to say Happy New Year to Martin Frank. The NFL New Year starts today, and you do some celebrating even before you get to 12 o'clock midnight. And I'm here to celebrate Martin Frank. Where would the Eagles be if they had not retained Rick Lovato? I think things would have just come apart at the seam. You got to do your business while you do the business. Martin, in the last, however, 48, 56, however many hours since they started allowing teams to negotiate with players, what's the most impactful move the Philadelphia Eagles have made?
Got to be Rick Lovato. You just said it.
Yeah, right. Besides Rick Lovato, obviously,
tongue in cheek,
I'd go with Saquon Barkley is the most impactful move that the Eagles made.
Hey, I'll say this real quick before I get to that, Martin. Our buddy Jimmy Kempsky points out that Rick Lovato has had more forced fumbles for the Eagles last season than N'Kobe Dean, Shaq Leonard, Zach Cunningham, Kevin Byard, Reed Blankenship, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Nolan Smith, James Bradbury, and Darius Slay combined. So don't disrespect the name of Rick Lovato. Actually, when you have a long snapper, when you don't have to worry about, that's a good thing. And Rick's made the Pro Bowl. So it is kind of a big deal that they're so secure at that position. But it only matters when you make a mistake. Saquon, yeah. Boy, I don't like it, Martin. I'm like the only one in town. I like the CJ move. I think they saw life with CJ Gardner-Johnson, saw life without CJ Gardner-Johnson. Yeah. And boy, they need a playmaker in the secondary, and he's a playmaker. Now, I'm concerned about injuries. He barely played last season in Detroit. He missed games while he was here. There's durability concerns. But, boy, he can make plays on the football when it's in the air, and they really, really need that on defense. I think he'll be a great fit for Vic Fangio. With Saquon, it's not that he's not a good player, but how much better, how much more production can you get than what the Eagles did from their running backs the past 2 seasons? Other than the passing game, the pass pro, that stuff's going to improve a little bit because Saquon's better. But how much of an improvement is it to go outside of your wheelhouse and say, all right, forget what we said the last 7 years. We're going to pay top of the line money for a running back.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, but I look at it like what you mentioned. Obviously, Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift both have career years, their last years in Philly, but look at what they've done when they weren't in Philly. So Sanders obviously went to Carolina this past year, got a big contract, did absolutely nothing, and was benched for most of the season. I think barely averaged 3 yards a carry. DeAndre Swift, before he came to Philly, he had a couple decent years, maybe 600 yards rushing, I think was his best before he got here. And then he has, over 1,000 yards and everything like that. So you look at Saquon Barkley then, he's been on some bad Giants teams with some awful offensive lines, and he still rushed for over 1,300 yards twice. He had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage his rookie year and everything. And even like in 22, I think he had like almost 1,700 yards from scrimmage. So he's proven he can run the ball. He can catch the ball. He's great in pass protection. You never have to take him off the field. And that was kind of like the problem with Sanders and Swift to some extent. I mean, Swift, as good as a receiver he was, is not nearly the kind of runner that Saquon Barkley is. And Sanders, as good as he was his last year in Philly, he also had the injury concerns also, and wasn't really relied on in the passing game. You had to bring in Kenny Gainwell, and you knew every time Gainwell was in the game what the Eagles were doing. And it's the same thing, with Swift last year. I mean, if you had Gainwell in there, you knew what the Eagles were doing. And Swift wasn't like a guy who would go up the middle and get you the tough yards. I mean, he had a good year and everything, but neither one of those guys is Saquon Barkley, and that makes the Eagles offense even more dangerous than it has been the last 2 years. I mean, last year towards the end obviously got pretty stale and didn't go well and stuff, but Barkley changes all that by himself, and that makes and then you look at the impact it has on A, Jalen Hurts as a runner, and B, Hurts as a passer, throwing to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and now Devontae Parker, who are all going to have single coverage.
I haven't mentioned Devontae Parker, by the way. We should have mentioned that, Jody.
We should
Devontae.
have.
Yeah.
Because 2 years ago I was absolutely stumping for Devontae Parker to come here. Little did I know Howie Roseman had a AJ Brown card coming out of his back pocket at the draft. So we'll get back to Devontae. But here's my question for you, Martin, because it sounds like you're very on board with the Saquon Barkley move, as am I. Love the player. But if you're going to pay him top of the market money, which the Eagles did, you need to have him click on all cylinders. And a big part of that is ability to make plays out of the backfield and turn it upfield, break tackles, break big plays. Jalen Hurts has not been very good at connecting with guys coming out of the backfield. He just haven't. Plain and simple. Check the NFL rankings, quarterbacks, throwing the guys out of the backfield. He hasn't been good at it. Now, could be him. Could be the two guys who've been called plays the last 2 years. I don't think it's Shane Steichen. It could very well have been Brian Johnson. It might have been the overall Sirianni offense of, we're not going to worry about throwing the ball downfield. Our offense runs through Devontae, through AJ, through Dallas Goedert. And if we ever get around to it, we might throw it to a back. If it's on Jalen and Jalen isn't either just good at it or doesn't like doing it or disregards the guy in the offense and whatever read he is, are you not getting out of Saquon Barkley what you need to justify the kind of contract they've given him? Does that give you any pause?
No, it doesn't, because you've got spring practice, you've got training camp, and you got a new offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore. And I'm sure one of his directives is we got to make Saquon Barkley dangerous in the running game and the passing game. And, Kellen Moore has a track record of doing that. I mean, as much as he is a guy who loves to throw the ball, he also loves to throw the ball to the running back. I mean, you saw how dangerous Tony Pollard was in Dallas under Moore's system. And, obviously Austin Eckler with the Chargers has always been a good receiver out of the backfield. So
but he actually went backwards in that aspect.
Pretty significantly, from 100 to 50s. Now he held out for a while, and there were some other issues.
Obviously,
that
got hurt.
But he really took it down.
Well, I mean, the point is he's got like a track record. Moore's got a track record of throwing the ball to the running back, and you won't find many better than Saquon Barkley.
I actually agree with that. But here's my point. And I agree with the skill set of Saquon Barkley. It's rare. It's not Christian McCaffrey, but it's up there. When I hear in March about getting players in space, I cringe. Unless your name is Kyle Shanahan, I cringe. Because everybody talks about it and nobody does it. And they say, oh, we got to get this guy involved. We got to get this guy involved. The Eagles were talking that way about DeAndre Swift, Nick Sirianni. He's a great receiver in Detroit. We're going to get him involved. How'd that work? I said, you know what? If they use DeAndre Swift on those bubble screens, maybe it'll work occasionally. Instead of using the receivers, you got a running back who can make the first guy. They never do it. DeAndre Swift on real wheel routes, they never do it. They always talk about it. And I think they will make a concerted effort to do it more because of Barkley's abilities. But they just never do it, Martin. I've been fooled too many times. They might script the first 15 plays and they might say, all right, we're going to do it 2 or 3 times. Then they get the guts of the game. They completely forget about it. And I just don't think it's going to be that relevant. Unless Kyle Shanahan's proven it with Christian and Devo, and he does it. Everybody else, they pay lip service, and that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would just look at the guy calling the plays this year. It's a big departure over a Sirianni system the last 3 years and everything. So, if we're gonna find out just how much sway Kellen Moore has in the offense, because if he's not using Barkley the way he should be using him, he should be sued for malpractice, in my opinion. I mean,
there's a lot of expectations, and Martin is increasing the expectation. That's another part of it. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. You got to keep everybody happy. Now you got to keep Saquon Barkley happy. And then the other aspect I'll bring up with you, Martin, is the touches. 1,500 touches. You talked about his rookie season. He tore his ACL since then. He's had other significant injuries.
Right.
If you give me, and I've told this to Jody, if you give me the 2018 Saquon Barkley, I'm all on board. I haven't seen the 2018 Saquon Barkley since 2018. No concerns there?
Well, there was the 2022 Saquon Barkley, still at 1,300 yards rushing, another 300 or 400 yards receiving. I mean, you know, he's still good. I mean, you know, you won't find too many running backs who can do what he does. So I don't have too many concerns. I think Barkley's signing is a home run. I'm actually stunned by it, not in the fact that they were interested in him, but like once DeAndre Swift's market was set at like 12,
yeah, I thought when DeAndre signed for that, I'm like, oof.
Yeah, 12:02 on Monday afternoon. You know, with the DeAndre Swift 3 years, $24 million. I'm like, oh well, I guess Saquon Barkley's out of their range, but sure enough, they got him.
All right, if that's not the biggest one, and we'll put GJ to the side. Let's fire in the middle here. If I tell you Bryce Huff equals Jason Babin, your thoughts, Martin Frank?
Oh man, I don't know. I think Bryce Huff more equals Hassan Reddick, and
whoa, save that, Zander. Clip that tape right there. Martin Frank said Bryce Huff's going to be Hassan Reddick. Okay, we'll see.
I was going to say, if you look at their career trajectories, I mean, Reddick's first 3 or 4 years wasn't really much until I think it was year 4 when he finally had his first 10-sack season. You know, and Huff's the same way. I mean, except for Huff, obviously was an undrafted guy, worked his way up through the Jets pecking order, I guess, and you know, had a breakout year with 10 sacks. He's young still, you know, rushes the passer, kind of the same type of build as Reddick and everything. So I think, you know, I think that's the Eagles' idea is they're getting younger. They're getting a player who could have the same kind of production that Reddick had. And, you know, obviously they're making that clear by, you know, entertaining trade offers for both him and Josh Sweat. So, I mean, it's clear to me anyway that they look at Huff as a younger version of Reddick.
Yeah, I mean, Jody and I are kind of 180 shockingly on this. He's and so are you, are big on Barkley. I'm like the Huff signing. That's the one that's got to work. They need this guy to be a big time pass rusher. Because, you know, they're trying to sort of get a little bit, he's trying to thread this needle, trying to get younger, as you mentioned, Martin, a little bit less expensive, have him for a longer shelf life.
Less expensive. Time out Philadelphia. He's making more money than either Josh.
No, but I'm not talking the projection of where Josh and Hassan are going to be with extensions. It far surpasses 17 million. So I'm not talking about the snapshot today. I'm talking about a 3-4 year shelf life, which they're hoping to get out of Bryce Huff. You never think about more than 3 years now in the NFL, but if you can extend that shelf life at 17 million again in the third year, guess what? Bryce Huff will probably be complaining because he'll be underpaid if he hits, and he'll be saying, "Hey, what about me? I need more money." That's kind of how it works. So Hassan Reddick's going to get a lot of money. It's just a matter of how much. And it looks like Josh Sweat is on the move. They might move both of them. What would you do on the pass rush? They also want Nolan Smith involved. What put your Vic Fangio hat on, Martin. What do you want on the edges?
Yeah, I still think they could draft someone in the first or second round too. I mean, you know, I don't think they're done at edge rusher, especially. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if both Reddick and Sweat were gone. I just think the Eagles don't want to pay those guys their next contracts. You mentioned, you know, what they would be worth on the next deal. I mean, Reddick wants to be paid like, you know, in the $20 to $25 million range average value per year.
I'll give you a guy. Danielle Hunter signed yesterday, 2 years, $49 million. I think Hassan Reddick and Danielle Hunter check their career stats, last 2 years stats. Hunter had a better year last year than Reddick, but Reddick had a better year the year before. Average the two. That's about his range.
Yeah.
If you're not ready to pay him $25 million, yeah, you got to move on.
Yeah, and why would the Eagles want to do that with a guy who's turning 30 in September? So
Daniil Hunter's a year older than that, so the Texans decided they could pay him $24.5 million.
He only signed for 2 years. You probably have to give Reddick at least a 2-year extension, which wouldn't start till 25. So you're paying him you're putting him down on the cap for at least 20 million, like into his mid 30s. I mean, that's a lot of money for a guy who might start declining. I mean, you don't know. I mean, maybe he goes somewhere else and has 15 sack seasons for the next 3 years and you got egg on your face. But I mean, the chances of that aren't as great. And the thing with Sweat, that kind of surprises me a little bit too. But, he's also his current deal is like a 13 million average value. His next contract is probably going to be the same range as what Huff signed for, like the 17 to $20 million a year. Plus, they're about the same age, but Sweat had that catastrophic knee injury, and you never know how much longer that's going to hold up. So, it makes sense to take a chance. You have a better chance of hitting on a guy like Huff, who's younger, healthier, with that kind of money than you do with both Sweat and Reddick. And I mean, if both those guys are gone, the Eagles need to get another one, obviously in the draft. But even if they don't, they probably should get. I mean, I think at least one of them is not coming back, and maybe both. And you could always get another one in the draft. I mean, the Eagles will know by then what they need and everything like that. So I think they have options. I mean, I think obviously they're counting on Nolan Smith taking a big leap, and I think that might be the key to all of this working too, because if he has another year like he did his rookie year, the Eagles are going to be in trouble. They're going to have to do something. But yeah, I mean, I think the Huff signing is a good one. I think it definitely might mean the end for either Sweat or Reddick, and maybe both.
Yeah, Devontae Parker. Much less splashy. The Eagles got him essentially for the veteran minimum, and New England's going to pay him the rest of his scheduled $4 or $5 million, whatever it was, with offset issues. So worthy of a dice roll, veteran player. A lot of criticisms I've heard. I didn't pay attention to Devontae Carter yet. A lot of trouble gaining separation, according to fans up there. So it's hard to imagine he can't be better than what the Eagles rolled out there as the third receiver last year, though. Any excitement over Devontae Parker?
Well, should we have a moment of silence now for Quez Watkins? Or
Quez surprisingly hasn't signed in the first 2 days.
Surprisingly, huh, John? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I thought he'd be the first wide receiver off the board. No, go ahead.
I think for like 1.2 million, I think it's a great risk. I mean, you look at a guy like that who has the track record that he does. I mean, he's been in the league for 10 years. I mean, he's a little bit older, but he's not. I don't think he's finished by any stretch of the imagination. And some of the issues in New England, I mean, you look at their offense. I mean, look who was throwing him the ball and everything, and they didn't really have much. And what
happened to Mac Jones, man? That rookie year, he looked like pretty good, and man, I don't know what happened there. Yeah. But yeah, I hear a lot of this context. I hear it with Saquon. Now I'm hearing with you. I mean, Devontae was a big time player for a while in Miami. I blaming the supporting cast. The Eagles obviously have a tremendous supporting cast on paper offensively. Maybe that can elevate these players. But don't great players overcome that? Truly good. And I'm not talking about Devontae. I mean, he's aging.
I don't know that he was ever a truly great player at any point in his career.
But if you are really good, don't you overcome that, or is that legitimate? At least to a point. Like I heard the same thing with Sam Darnold. Oh, he never had a good. Now I'll have a good supporting cast.
Yeah, I mean, you're not bringing him in to replace AJ Brown or Devontae Smith. You're bringing him in to be the third receiver. Maybe get the 8 or 10 yard pass. you know, keep the sticks moving, stuff like that. I mean, you're not looking at him
But he's also like 6'3", 215. Like, where's he playing?
Yeah.
He's not a slot receiver.
Why
you
not?
know?
I mean, why can't he be? You know, like there's so many different ways to use the third wide receiver. I mean, with Quez, you know, his thing was speed. So, you know, you open up the field for AJ and Devontae Smith. But I mean,
Cody's favorite.
Theoretically,
yeah.
Theoretically. But like you look at Devontae Parker, you could have a third receiver who's a big, tall guy who can catch the ball in traffic.
Does that mean more Devontae Smith in the slot? I would like that.
I think like there are any kind of like so many different kind of options you can do. Everything.
You have a Devontae and a Devontae.
Yeah.
Differently.
I'm going to ask you to do this, Martin, because I'm not going to ask John. Will you ask Nick Sirianni, how are you going to survive without Quez Watkins taking the top off the defense this year? Because, man, did he go to the well with that one. Don't worry about Quez's catch. Quez makes Devontae Smith better. Quez makes A.J. Brown better. And their wide receivers go out and sign a slow veteran who's an outside wide receiver, not a slot guy. Really? I guess they flushed the whole, well, you got to have speed for the other wide receiver to make it easier on AJ and Devontae. That idea's gone right out the window, and that was Sirianni's idea. So please, at some point, will you ask him, hey, coach, when did you give up on your third wide receiver has to be a speed guy so you can make life easier for
Well, I
AJ
think
Brown?
that I'll jump in. I think the contract says don't put Devontae Parker's name in pen on the Eagles roster.
I'll put it in over Quez Watkins. I'll take any of either you two guys' actions. Devontae Parker will have more catches, more yards than Quez Watkins in an Eagle uniform.
Oh, yeah. Quez isn't going to be on the Eagles, but they're going to draft a receiver. They're going to bring somebody. By no means is he guaranteed to make this roster. And to be honest, I would be stunned if Devontae Parker ends up being the Eagles' third receiver. I think they want to upgrade more significantly, especially Kellen Moore's history. He's an 11 personnel guy, so he's going to have 3 receivers on the field. I think
which of their first 3 picks are they going to be using for a wide receiver, John? Because otherwise they're drafting one in day 3 and they're hoping for another Quez Watkins, which didn't really quite pan out over the course of Quez's career.
See what they do in free agency. You know, there's still
Who's that
more
speed wide receiver left out there, John?
There's always speed wide receivers. There's always guys who can run. The problem is, can they catch? There's always guys. You can find that they'll bring in rookie tryout guys who can run.
Well, they had Devon Allen both the last 2 years. How much of a shot they give him?
Well, that's the exact point, making my point. Running isn't the issue. You can find a bunch of guys who can run. The fact is, can you run routes? Can you catch the football? Can you do it consistently? Can you track the football? A lot of things. But my only point is Devontae Parker is not the third receiver on this team by de facto creed, because they signed him to a $1.2 million contract. I mean, they'll still look to upgrade. And that brings me to the other kind of small moves they've made. Matt Hennessy, they signed a linebacker. I keep forgetting his name. Baum from New England.
Yeah.
Zach Baum, thank you. Any of those? I think Hennessy makes sense. Now, he's had some injuries, but to be a backup for Cam Jurgens, backup on the interior, he's got some starting experience at least a couple years ago. I think that's a solid signing. And Zach Baum, do you think that's about special teams, Martin, or will they give him an opportunity to compete to be one of those off-ball linebackers?
I think it's more a special teams type of signing. I mean, I think he only has like maybe not even a dozen starts in his career. I think he's more of a special teams guy. I mean, maybe possibly spot starting here and there, depending on injuries and all that. But I would think that their second starting linebacker still is not on the roster. And I actually like the Hennessy signing because you can do like so many different things with him. I mean, let's say, for example, you want to keep Cam Jurgens at right guard because, you think that's ultimately his best position. Well, you could put Hennessy in at center. I mean, that he started every game for the Falcons there in, I think, 2021, and then he got hurt, obviously. But, so you could do that, or you put Jurgens, obviously, at center. You have Hennessy to compete for the starting right guard job with Tyler Steen. I mean, if the Eagles aren't sold on Tyler Steen as a starting right guard, then, Hennessy's a guy who can start there.
By the way, Martin, let me interrupt real quick because I'm dealing with Groats and Kratz, as you know, so much. And Bob was at the forefront. Oh, maybe they'll move Landon Dickerson to center. And Landon doesn't say a lot. And he got asked the question yesterday, oh, are you going to stay at left guard? And he said, that's not up to me. That's what he always says. It's Stoutland's decision. But he's not moving. Why are so many people thinking Landon Dickerson is moving? Please tell me you're not in that camp.
I am not. In fact, I was just going to get to that, while I was going on this rant of mine. Like another option would have been to move Landon Dickerson from left guard to center. Why would you do that? I mean, the guy's been a Pro Bowl left guard for 2 years. I mean, leave the guy where he is. He's obviously the best guy in the NFL, one of the best guards in the NFL. You just signed him to an $84 million contract. It's not to move him to center. It's to keep him at left guard. So I don't see that as an option at all. I'm in the anti-growth.
All right. Yes, I got one.
Yeah, that would be roster building malpractice. Let's make the guy the highest paid guard in the NFL. Oh, and then move him to center. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I know he played center in Alabama, and he was a darn good one. And the Eagles drafted him there as an eventual replacement of Jason Kelce. But he's a natural left guard. He's a Pro Bowl player. Why would you change that?
Roach is like a dog with a bone. And then he heard Landon say, well, I don't know. Landon always says that. Always. It's like, that's not up to me.
He went to the Nick Saban school of not giving the media much. In fact, he actually about that. So, that's kind of his way of saying, I'm staying at left guard. They're giving me $84 million. I'm a left guard.
Now, Martin, you've been pretty optimistic today, pretty positive, more than glass half full. You're 3/4 with all these Eagle moves. I'm going to give you one where I'm sorry. You just can't possibly be positive. The Eagles lost Marcus Mariota to the Commanders yesterday. Need for a new backup quarterback here in town because Marcus Mariota is not going to be around to kick around anymore. Where the Eagles going for backup quarterback? Is it going to be Tanner McKee elevated to that position? He was okay in preseason last year, but if he's your backup quarterback and Jalen Hurts collapses an ankle in week 2, your season is over and done with. Are the Eagles going to get a veteran backup quarterback this offseason?
I don't see them spending Mariota type of money for a backup quarterback. So I'll answer your question by saying I think they could go in the draft for a quarterback. And I wrote this like maybe a month ago and got killed for it, but they have 2 second-round picks. If there's a guy like Michael Penix or Bo Nix still available, why wouldn't you take a chance on that? You only have to pay him like $1.5 million, and you can develop the guy behind Jalen Hurts. And, if something really bad happens to Hurts, if he has like a Carson Wentz type of career collapse in the next few years, well, you've got
bring that up
on the roster. But at the very least, you have a guy who's young, who's inexpensive, and who's good, that can be the backup. And if, let's say Hurts lives up to the contract, maybe you flip him in a few years for a second or first round pick. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went that route. I mean, they're obviously spending a lot of money elsewhere, like at running back and safety and defensive end, so I can't see them shelling out like $5 to $10 million on a backup quarterback. So why not look for one in the draft? I mean,
they just did it with Jalen Hurts. It'd be Jalen Hurts part 2. People lost their mind when they used the second-round pick on Jalen Hurts because they had Carson Wentz.
One second-round pick that year. They have 2 second-round picks this year. and they addressed a lot of their needs in free agency. So you're not looking necessarily to draft a certain position. I mean, obviously they still haven't done anything at cornerback, and they probably do need another defensive end, but you could roll the dice somewhere with that. You've got that extra second round pick, or you could even use it in the third round. I mean, maybe a guy like Spencer Rattler is available there, but what I'm saying is basically like they could find a backup quarterback in the draft unless they're sold on McKee. I mean, that's the thing. Like, we never saw him practice after the preseason game, so we don't know if he like really took off and was like throwing darts down the field like every practice, but I don't know about that. So yeah, I think there are options at backup quarterback. Maybe you get a veteran cheap, like 1.5 million.
They wanted Andy Dalton last year. Is Andy still out there? I think he is.
Probably.
Yeah. So they tend to like the veteran route. By the way, Marcus Mariota, I had to look it up, played 46 snaps last year.
Yeah.
He got $1 million raise. We'll see what the real contract is. So well done, Marcus Mariota, to get an extra $1 million with those 46 snaps. How about this one? And Frank NFL, make sure you follow Martin on X, read him, DelawareOnline.com. Justin Fields. The NFL seems to have spoken on Justin Fields, and nobody wants to offer anything for this poor guy. And he's got a lot of talent. I think Chicago ruined him with bad coaching. Why not send a couple day 3 picks and let Justin Fields back up Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be open to anything at this point. I mean, Howie's had a history of doing like creative, out of the box type of moves. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me at all either. I mean, I can't. Justin Fields would be as a backup, but then again, if you don't have a choice, you don't have a choice. The Bears could also keep him. I mean, they have nothing to lose by trading him right now, just dumping him for nothing. I mean, even if they draft a quarterback, you have a guy. If Caleb Williams or whoever isn't ready to start day one, you still have Fields. And
boy, I don't know if I want that situation around my young quarterback. Although that's
but Johnny Mac. If the Eagles traded for Justin Fields and Hurts has back-to-back bad games, you don't think you're going to get the same hue and cry from here in Philadelphia? Oh, get Justin in there. So what? They still got wherever Fields goes. If he's a backup, it's going to be issues. If you're penciling him in as a backup, doesn't matter Chicago, Philadelphia, or anywhere else, you're going to have the quarterback looking over his shoulder all year long.
I don't know. You and I liked him coming out, Jody.
I still like him.
Well, so do I, talent-wise. I like him talent-wise, but I don't think anyone around the NFL, like in Chicago, it's a deal because they took him in the first round. If he moves on to somewhere else, then he's just another failed first-round pick in a city. I don't think there'd be a hue and cry if
I do
backing up Jalen Hurts. I other than the typical backup, I mean, the old adage that the backup is the most popular player on the team when your starter is struggling. I mean, that happens no matter where you are. And the assumption is Jalen Hurts is not going to fall apart.
Right. But Jalen Hurts went backwards this year. I think we can all agree on this. He was not as good as he was the year before. Did the cry for Marcus Mariota ever come? No. And it shouldn't have. It could with Justin Fields. If they brought in
he's got Saquon Barkley. There's no cry. He's got the greatest supporting cast in the history of football.
Yeah, that's the thing. If Jalen Hurts regresses with Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, I mean, what do you got there? But,
yeah. All right, just remember, Jody Mack said it here. What's today's date? The 14th or whatever it is. The Eagles' backup quarterback should be Mason Rudolph. Who played well for the Steelers at the end of last year, got him into the playoffs with that late win, didn't play badly in the playoff game either, and they went out and decided to go with Russell Wilson. Mason Rudolph, solid backup quarterback, and you don't have to use a second-round draft pick to give yourself a cheap backup quarterback. Now, I don't know what Mason's going to get paid. Some of these quarterback contracts have surprised me. The fact that he didn't go in the first wave of quarterback signing. What kind of money do you think Mason Rudolph gets on the open market as a free agent who's been basically a bench warmer and just signed at the tail end leading into free agency. What do you think he'd get, Mark?
Well, if you're looking from an Eagles perspective, I don't think they'd be willing to go much above $2 million for any kind of veteran backup quarterback. And that not be,
even though they went 5 for Mariota last year. You think they're going to cut it back to 2 with an expanded cap, huh?
See, that's what I'm saying. I think they will. I don't think they're going to spend big on a backup quarterback. I think they either look at it and say, okay, we got Tanner McKee, he could be the backup, or we'll get somebody cheap in the draft and let him compete and see how it plays out. I mean, if Jalen Hurts gets hurt, for an extended period of time, there's no backup quarterback who to the Super Bowl. There's no Nick Foles out there. And it doesn't even matter because, there's such a big drop off. Like, who's Patrick Mahomes' backup? You know what I'm saying? Like, if Patrick Mahomes gets hurt, the Chiefs aren't winning the Super Bowl. If Jalen Hurts gets hurt, the Eagles aren't winning the Super Bowl. That's that type of thing. So, they spent their money elsewhere. I mean, look at what they've done so far. They're not spending big money on a backup quarterback.
Yeah, that's fair. But the Eagles have shown the history of wanting to do it. I mean, they want somebody that if they need to win a couple games, that they can win you those games. I think you're right. If you lose your starter for, in week 2, you're done. If you lose Patrick Mahomes, what Chad Henne had, remember the great drive Chad Henne had when Patrick is like, that's what you want. You want somebody who can just pick you up in a certain situation to get you over the top. But yeah, if you lose a star quarterback for 16 weeks, you're screwed.
Gardner Minshew was making $2 million, I think.
Yeah, that was a trade. Maybe they trade for a younger quarterback. Howie does that. He might do that at linebacker. Don't forget the trade market with Howie Roseman, because he will.
Great point.
That's how they brought CJ in the first time, a trade. Final year on his rookie deal. But anyway, yeah.
Got to be able to find those guys. That's a good sentiment, but then the deal's got to be there to be made, which is not always as easy as we think it's going to be. It is always easy talking to Martin Frank, though. MF, thank you very much for hopping on with us today. Martin Frank is giddy. I'd have to describe him if I had to.
He is excited about the move.
Giddy about the Eagles' moves this
Happy new league year, Martin Frank.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
It's going to be interesting. They did a lot, and probably still more to come, knowing Howie.
We shall see. Martin, thanks, bud. That's Martin Frank, Delaware News Journal, here with us on Birds 365. All right, quickie timeout, come back. I want to explore the third wide receiver a little bit more with John, and we'll set up for Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News, going to jump in and not only talk about Saquon Barkley, which is going to be the main topic of conversation, but the division rival New York Giants, what they've done. They can't even begin to match the Eagles because Martin Frank basically stamped their ticket to the Super Bowl, didn't he? Man, he was upbeat about the Eagles. I'm upbeat too, but not
positive.
As
need a little positive. Martin. I get criticized for being negative. I get criticized for being positive. I get what can I do? I can just tell you what I think of each move. That's what I do.
Exactly.
Some I like.
The way it should do it. That's why you're good at what you do. You take a move by move by move, and some are good and some are bad.
Yeah.
Or except if you're Martin Frank, then they're all good. Martin pretty good today. Yeah. The two Delaware guys are the best. Martin is Mr. Optimism, and Groats is Mr. Pessimism. They balance each other tremendously. As a matter of fact, when we get them on. All right. McMullen, McDonald coming back. We will put hour number 2 underway in just a second. Hey, Birds fans, I got a deal for you. Here's your chance to save up to 40% on your car insurance right now from one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call one of their 2 managing general partners, either Jim or Fran, and tell them you're a friend of JAKIB Sports and Birds 365.
My name is Fran Salerno, and I'm a managing director here at Del Valle Insurance Group. Been in the business for over 36 years, saving people money on their insurance needs. Give us a call. Let us help you custom design an insurance plan that meets both your needs and budget.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Mac guys here on Birds 365. Coming up in less than 15 minutes. Pat Leonard, New York Daily News, is going to join us, talk about Saquon Barkley and the Giants as well. Well, we get Pat up. Should be fun. John, I want to ask you about two skill positions. We touched on both of them in part with Martin when he was on with us, but I want to go a little more deep dive with you on the backup quarterback position and the wide receiver 3 position. Now, I'm going to run a name by you. And in past iterations of Birds 365, you have sung this young man's praises for varying reasons. And you have told me that the Philadelphia Eagles also thought very highly of him. You said, don't discount the fact that how he could actually make a trade and get himself a backup quarterback. I got a guy for you.
Let's hear it.
His name's Zach Wilson.
Ah, yeah. They love
John McMullen has sat here and said, well, he's an arm talent. I was at those practices between the Jets and Eagles. He made some throws that wowed you.
He can throw the football.
And then the games are played and Zach Wilson falls flat on his face. But you told me the Eagles also loved him coming out of college. And if he wasn't the second pick of the draft, that they might have been involved in him. I can guarantee you Zach Wilson is readily available. Even with Aaron Rodgers being talked about as potentially being the vice president of the United States. And I'm not shitting you about that. That is an actual thing. That Robert Kennedy, who's going to run independent on the ticket against Trump and Biden, the president of the United States, is actually considering having Aaron Rodgers as his running mate, even with that in play.
Yeah, he's also considering Jesse Ventura. So yeah, he's got a lot of names, a lot of conspiracies.
He might be considering John McMullen if he's talking Aaron Rodgers.
I'll take it.
Well, we get McMullen on that ticket. They've just given up on it's done. It's
you should give up on that.
Can't go back there anymore. Would that be a smart play for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yeah, I take a flyer on Zach Wilson. Why not? They loved him in the past. I love the revisionist history when a player fails.
No. You can't say that with me sitting right here.
No.
I didn't like the kid from the day he was picked. My
talking
segment,
about.
what the hell are the Jets doing taking this guy at number 2?
I'm not talking about Jody McDonald. I'm talking about league revision. Like the Jets were the only ones who would have taken Zach. Well, that's bullshit. The Eagles loved him. A lot of teams loved him. He does if you know he can throw the football. There's no question about it. As I said, when you're same thing with Saquon Barkley. They're both second picks in the draft, right? They when you fail and you're the second pick in the draft, it's not because you don't have talent. It's other things.
Mm-hmm.
He's got talent, and the Eagles loved it at one point. Did they have the hubris to think that it's similar to Fields? A lot of the people just assume situation doesn't matter. And I think the Chicago Bears absolutely ruined Justin Fields. Can he recover? I don't know. Hopefully, good luck to him wherever his next spot ends up being. Can Zach Wilson recover? Somebody's going to give him a chance. And the Eagles loved him at one point, and they do have a lot of hubris as an organization, and you could probably get him for a conditional 7th round pick. Why not? I hadn't thought of that. It's not bad. It's not a bad idea, Jody.
Yeah, it is, because the kid just is not a National Football League player. As you said, talent is where it's got to start. But then there are a lot of other things that come into someone becoming the best football player that they can be. And I think Zach Wilson is lacking in a lot of those areas. And the fact that he's got some arm talent just falls by the wayside because he's not.
Well, and how he's got a good feel, maybe it is. Maybe it's some of the off the field stuff. Maybe it's work ethic. I don't know. There's a lot of things it could be, but how he's got a very good, obviously, relationship with Joe Douglas. So he probably knows exactly what went on and what some of the things the Jets don't like. And maybe that sours him. But just from the perspective of what they thought of him coming out, yeah, they loved him. They loved him. And that was the 2021 draft.
Good thing the Eagles didn't have the second pick of the draft that year.
Well, that you remember they had that was the Devontae Smith draft where they went down and they went up. They went from 6, and part of the reasons they went down originally was because they couldn't get up far enough to get Zach Wilson. And they said, well, if we're not going to be able to get Zach Wilson, there's 4 players. I'm trying to remember the 4 players. 2 of them were
2 corners, Devontae Smith and
Jalen Waddle. Those were the 4 players. And they thought, well, one of those 4 players is going to be there at 12. And all of a sudden, Waddle went off the board, ironically, at 6, which was the Eagles' original pick. Horn went off at 8, which I think really surprised them. That would have been the player they took. Surtain was 9. And I think, I don't know, that Horn would have been the player they took. And then it was either Waddle, Surtain, or vice versa. And Devontae was the last one. And once they realized, remember, the Giants
they had to get ahead of the Giants
at 11, right? And they knew the Giants were going to take Devontae Smith. So they had to jump back up to get Devontae Smith, which has worked out perfectly. Then the Giants moved down and took Kadarius Toney. So didn't work out well for them. The Bears are the ones who jumped up to get Justin Fields. Hasn't worked out for them. And the Dallas Cowboys just sat there and smiling because they moved down and got Micah Parsons. So worked out for them.
The Eagles and the Cowboys came out pretty well with that draft with the guys that they had to get. And one other wide receiver point before we get Pat Leonard up here. I got to give Jimmy Kempski and John McMullen a hard time because both of you suggested an Eagles potential for wide receiver 3 was Darnell Mooney of the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, he got paid more than I thought. I'll take the hit on that. Now, again, much of what I base my opinion on, because he's the best in the business, is Brad Spielberger, our buddy, who does the contract stuff for PFF. Now he compiled it before the spike in the salary cap. So I want to give Brad a little dispensation. So nobody thought the salary cap, well, actually over the cap had it right, and then they skewed it back. And Jason Fitzpatrick was cursing himself because he said he should have kept it, because he was the only one who projected originally it might be that high. So all of a sudden it got a lot higher. But even with that higher, I'm surprised he got the deal that he got.
Well, as am I, but not nearly as surprised as you and Kempsky should have been, because I said all along, he's a wide receiver too. Yes. On a bad team, he could be a wide receiver 1, $13 million per. He's a wide receiver 2. He sure as hell wasn't a wide receiver 3. There was no way the Eagles were getting Darnell Mooney at the amount they were going to pay, which we've now seen what the amount is, veteran minimum for wide receiver they acquired yesterday. They were not going to pay what Mooney was going to get on the open market. Yes, the addition to the cap drove it up even further than I thought it was going to be, but he was a wide receiver 2. He's never going to go wide receiver 3 on the open market.
He was a wide receiver on a bad team, and he had his one big year in 2021, and even the Bears knew, well, we have to get better at wide receiver. He's not a wide receiver 1. He's not he is a wide receiver 3. Now the good news for him is
$39 million, John.
He was a wide.
That sets your wide receiver spot more so than opinion. If you're getting paid like a wide receiver 2, you're a wide receiver 2.
Well, and by the way, he's going to have a quarterback who's going to get him the football. So he's going to get every opportunity to put up some numbers. But yeah, I mean, that's he was on a bad team, and when he had his good season, and they knew they had to get better, and they want to get DJ Moore, and he was a wide receiver 3 on the Chicago Bears. On the Chicago Bears by the time it ended. I have to look it up, but because I'm not an expert on the Bears, but I'll look up the Bears real quick. He caught 40 passes last year. And you know, I think he would have been a great fit for the Eagles as a wide receiver 3. But yeah, once you get that money, obviously you're not coming. But even when you have the 1,000-yard, you know who he reminded me of to a certain degree? And Eric Wilson, because Eric Wilson, who the Eagles signed at linebacker, remember the Eric Wilson era? And I told you, 20-point scorer on a bad NBA team. He had a great year. I forget who got hurt. It was either Kendricks or Barr. Got hurt in Minnesota. So he was forced to play. And he just made a bunch of plays. Interceptions, tackles all over the place. And I got that quote. I think it's one of the great quotes, so I always use it. 20-point scorer on a bad NBA team. And he came here, and he was terrible. He was beyond terrible. Now, Mooney's not that bad. I'm not going to go that far. But that's who he reminded me of. 20-point scorer on a bad NBA team. And we'll see. He'll have every opportunity with Kirk Cousins to have a big time statistical year. Now, I don't know who's Atlanta's other receivers. Do you know offhand?
Their tight end is their number one.
Well, Kyle, obviously, do they have any other? Let me look up.
Not really. They didn't have a stud star wide receiver this year. Mooney's going to compete for wide receiver 1. Don't know that he'll actually become that. But again, if you were looking to add him to the Eagles, he needed to be a wide receiver 3, not wide receiver, not jumping either Devontae Smith and or AJ Brown. And I knew he was going to get paid enough that he was going to absolutely.
Oh, Drake London. That's who I'm forgetting. Drake. Drake's
second year player.
big time.
Right.
Drake's got a lot of talent, obviously, former top 10 pick. So he's their big receiver, and he'll fit in there as number 2, but he'll have an opportunity to make a lot of plays with Kirk Cousins throwing the football. And you see the numbers that he put up in Minnesota, Washington. There isn't a more consistent numbers quarterback in the NFL. Yep. So he'll have every opportunity. Godspeed to him. But I don't think he's a big time. We just disagree on the player. I don't think he's a big time number 2 receiver in this league. Never mind number 1.
Right. But here's where I'll take my stance. He has a better chance to be a number 1 wide receiver for the Falcons this year than he did being a 3rd receiver for the Eagles. It wasn't happening. He wasn't coming here. He's going to get paid an amount. And even I have to admit, he got more than I thought he was going to get. I thought he was going to be a $10 million guy. Turned out to be a $13 million guy.
Especially how much they had to pay the quarterback. My God. I mean,
$13 million to pay him tells you something. I thought there was no chance the Eagles were going to invest $10 million in a 3rd wide receiver. It just wasn't going to happen, and that's how much money I thought he was going to get, and even got more than I thought he was going to get. All right, let's take a quick timeout, come back. Hoping to hear from Pat Leonard, New York Daily News. He was one of the early guys on the Eagles are really pursuing Saquon Barkley train, and the deal got done. We're going to talk some Saquon Barkley and some Giants with Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News next here on Birds 365.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today, and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You got Mac back here, Jordan McDonald, John McMullen. We're still waiting on Pat Leonard. Hopefully he's going to join us in the upcoming minutes. But if he doesn't, we still got plenty of Eagles stuff to talk about. And again, none of us can top, or at least John and I are not going to do that because we're already on record with a bunch of our opinions. The positivity that Martin Frank brought to the table this morning. He liked everything that the Eagles have done so far. At least he made it sound that way. I talked to Brian Cameron from Philly Sports Network, not last night, but the night before on WIP. And the Eagles hadn't re-signed DJ yet, but I asked about the 3 big moves that the Eagles made. And he said, I love it. I love it. And I love it. So there is some positivity out there in the universe for the Eagles right now. Howie Roseman could probably bring down the house if he could find a borderline star-level linebacker. John, I don't think there's a borderline star-level linebacker out there to be had.
Not in an obvious case. Not, maybe there's a CJ Gardner Johnson final year on this rookie deal linebacker that, maybe I'll try to do some research on that for tomorrow's show, that maybe they could think about trade-wise, but certainly on the free agent market. I guess the most logical one, I think Baker's still out there.
Yep,
I don't
Jerome
think
Baker.
I think he would be the last one, and he has a history with Vic Fangio from Miami. He's a pretty good player. Had some injury issues. It's probably not going to get a splash at linebacker.
No, he is not. The splashy linebackers are all off the board. The Eagles have again shown their valuation of the linebacker position. And for me, it comes up a little bit short. And I took a couple of calls last night, and it just pains me to say this because I think that it's woefully overstated, but I'm not going to dismiss it out of hand. The size of linebackers in the National Football League, they're undervalued to begin with. And then there's a major emphasis put on the size of linebackers. Sometimes I think over the top, but I can't just say, yeah, you can put 290-pound guys out there and they can play linebacker if they're good athletes. I know that's not the case. They put a lot of eggs in the Kobe Dean's basket again this offseason. Howie Roseman on record, still love the player, still have faith in him, still going to be our inside linebacker with his dot on the helmet. And you know how I feel about Nakobe Dean. I just love the talent. But I realize he's a little undersized for the linebacker position. And the guy that I would love to see the Eagles draft would be Jeremiah Trotter Jr. And I think he could very well be there in the second round. Because, John, most all year, and you know I follow draft guys religiously all year long, my buddy Saratella and Ian Cummings, and a lot of guys had him in the bottom of the first round. In almost every mock draft I can see, he falls into the second round, and some to the bottom of the second round. The Eagles could get him with their own pick in the second round, not even have to use the same pick to get him in the second round. The only problem with me for Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is he's undersized. So if you're going to play 2 undersized linebackers when you just signed a defensive end to a mega contract and his weakness is he's not real good at playing the run, because he's even a little undersized for a defensive end. They could be a team that could easily be run on next year if they're undersized. I think the Eagles came up small in the linebacker area here. I think they needed to get a above the middle of the pack linebacker, and I don't even know if that's left on the open market.
Yeah, I mean, most of the guys I had just sort of circled that maybe they would have potential interest in have gone, are all gone. Mentioned some of the names earlier. I liked Al Shahir. I liked Cashman. I liked Baker for them potentially. He's the one that's left. I'm trying to think of the other one I mentioned. Josie Jewell, who had a history. Boy, you know who's out there? Devin White. I don't want him.
Yeah, you've been pretty outspoken about Devin White, and I agree with you. He is. You talk about the anomaly. for him to be as good as he was for a short period of time, he had superstar written all over him. And man, did he face plant. He wasn't all that good before he went off and had that great run with the Bucs, and he's done next to nothing since. He just doesn't add up.
Boy, a top 5 pick. So I thought there would be a lot of hype about it. And what does that tell you? Because we know how this league thinks about players and pedigrees, and the fact that he's still on the market. Here, because I just pulled it up. I was looking for Josie Jewell's name. I forgot. He was one of the guys. So here's his PFF. 2021, 79 of 86. 2022, 74 of 81. 2023, 80 of 82 linebacker. I mean, just awful. And he was phenomenal in that playoff run when they won the Super Bowl. I've rarely seen anything like it.
No.
And clearly, I mean, he can run and he's got talent, but boy, and all you talk to people in Tampa, we've talked to a lot of people in Tampa because the Eagles have played the Bucs quite a bit over the past number of years in the playoffs as well, twice. They all say the same thing. Never in position, always, all of them. It's just, it hasn't worked out for Tampa.
He's the Zach Wilson of linebackers. You can have a lot of talent, but you got to actually be able to play. And I'm not sure that he can. All right. We see in the green room that our buddy Pat Leonard has been good enough to jump
there he is.
Here. And he's got some growth going on the chin. Yeah. Are you trying to catch up to me and McMullen with the gray beard working, Leonard?
I'm trying. I turned 40 a couple of weeks ago, so
you still got a ways to go. You got plenty. Happy new league year officially, Pat. And I want to start this by giving you the mea culpa, because you're the first guy. I've covered the Eagles for a long time, so anybody talks about running backs, I say, you're nonsense. Stop it. You know, we go through this every year. And I saw Pat. I said, you know, the Eagles are interested. And I went, oh, well, what? And I had to start taking it a little bit more seriously. But even then, I admit, and there's the mea culpa, I admit, well, they're not going to $10 million. They might have interest if there's value and this and that. But man, Howie liked the player, thinks that presence will transform this offense like Christian McCaffrey did to the 49ers. I disagree with him, but that's another conversation. When did it become real for Pat Leonard?
Yeah, I agree with you, John. Like, I think even when I talked to several people who had the Eagles in that like small group of teams that were going to show interest when he hit the free agent market, I was still skeptical that they would, let's say, outbid the Bears financially, right? And it did turn out that the Bears were in on it. The Texans were actually, it was really Texans and Eagles down at the end. But I was with you that thinking that knowing Howie Roseman's track record, his ability to find value at that position and at non-premium positions on rosters, that it was like, is he really going to break the bank for this player? But really, as we got closer to the weekend, it became clear that the interest was, you know, they were going to put their money where their mouth was. And it really is about, like you just said, they don't view it as paying a running back. They view it as paying a weapon. But it was fascinating too. You know, you had to know Saquon a little bit to understand the reality of the Eagles happening as well, because it's the interest from the Eagles. It's also the interest from the Saquon side. But from my vantage point too, knowing that coming down the stretch as the tampering period was approaching, talking to people who were confirming for me after I had reported they were interested here, telling me this was interest that existed last year too. That the Eagles were one of the teams waiting on Saquon to hit the market a year ago, and then the Giants tagged him. The Giants were trying to get a deal done with Saquon to tag Daniel Jones. They couldn't do that, so they signed Daniel. They tagged Saquon. He thought, well, I'm not tagged at this point. I'm probably going to hit the market. I'm going to be able to talk to some of these suitors. That never transpired. But so the Eagles were essentially waiting 12 more months, and Saquon, in the back of his mind, waiting 12 more months to maybe have that conversation.
So let me ask you about offers, because there have been a good couple of reports over the last 24, 48 hours.
Yeah.
That the Giants never made Saquon a multi-year offer this year. They talked about it previously leading up to the tagging or whatever else. But after this season was over and done with, that the Giants never actually made a multi-year deal, and there has been some significant pushback from New York media, mostly Tiki Barber, but others as well, on how dare he go to the Eagles? How dare he sign with a rival? Well, if the Eagles made him an offer and the Giants never made him an offer, how can you get mad at Saquon Barkley?
Well said, Jody. Well said. No, there was no counter offer. The agreement was he would bring something back to the Giants, see if they would match. But the Giants were telling people at the NFL Combine that they didn't see the value in spending $10 million a year on a running back. So Saquon's agent, Saquon Barkley himself,
except they did it the year before by putting a tag on him.
Right. And so they all know, though, going in after coming out of the combine so first of all, Saquon said coming out of the end of the season, just tell me whether you're going to tag me or not right now. Like, stop dragging this out. And the Giants didn't do that. They said, hey, let's regroup at the combine. We'll talk there. It just dragged out and out to the point where no offer happened. And once they knew the Giants were telling people they weren't in the double digits this year in running backs, they knew that the offers that were coming out on the table, that the Eagles are going to be in on, the Texans in on that, they knew that it was going to be out of the Giants' price range. So it was not going to be anything the Giants were going to challenge. And, there's such a history over the last year behind why it came to that. Really goes back to Barkley not being pleased with, number one, the guaranteed money in the Giants' original multi-year deals, and two, feeling slighted that it got leaked from, who knows where, but Saquon intimated that the Giants had said to him inside, like, let's keep all this in the building, and that leaks had come out making him look greedy. And so he kind of bit his tongue, swallowed his pride, came back and signed that adjusted franchise tag deal last year, didn't even hold out of training camp, which was a surprise to everybody. But culminating now here in this free agency period, it was kind of all coming to roost for both sides.
It's interesting because in some ways, from what you're describing, the Giants and the Eagles went Freaky Friday on us. They turned into each other. The Giants are the ones saying, let's get good value at a non-premium position, as you described, which I think is a great descriptor. And the Eagles went the Giants' direction. Let's go all in on the running back. Is it some ways, and I bring this up with McCaffrey as well, McCaffrey wasn't a great fit in Carolina, a rebuilding team. He was a perfect fit in San Francisco. So are they both right? Maybe the Giants are right, and they get value out of Devin Singletary for a lot less because they're not quite ready to be a contender. And maybe the Eagles are right too. Is that possible?
That's so well said, John. Is it, like from Joe Shane's point of view, is it as simple as, hey, Saquon might be perfect for that team, he's just not for us at that price point, right? And the Eagles conversely saying, we have a quarterback who has shown he can take us to a Super Bowl, but we also have to give him more help and kind of rejuvenate him, get him back to where he was, right? And it's also, Saquon's a piece that, he's a finishing piece is what you hope he is, right? Similar to the way Derrick Henry goes to Baltimore. Now, the Eagles finished the season much differently than the Ravens did, but they still think they have that kind of talent where if they add a Saquon Barkley, especially giving the offensive line that they hope consistently stays at that high level without Jason Kelce, that he can be the thing that puts them over the top. I think you're right. Joe Shane, this is one thing, even though he's made some, key mistakes and critical mistakes, especially building the O-line for the Giants, he does have a defined process. Like, one thing I like about how he operates, and obviously coming off Dave Gettleman, everything's an upgrade, but the way that he really sensibly and diligently studies and evaluates the market, and he doesn't want to be caught up in overpays, especially when you have a roster with the Giants that is missing high-end talent at key spots, not just lacking in depth behind it. The Eagles conversely have a lot of high-end talent, some depth, but also are still filling those holes. So they are two teams at two different spots. So in a way, they are both addressing their needs accordingly.
But the phrase "hog mollies" has outlived Dave Gettleman. At least he's still got that going for him.
That's right.
The Giants ever close with Xavier McKinney? They made their decision on Barkley, never really had an offer on the table at the end when he decided to jump ship. Were they ever in the mix for McKinney, the best safety available? At least he's the highest paid so far in the free agent market. Where did that negotiation go?
They were, both sides wanted to make it work originally, but Mulugeta, McKinney's agent, he did good work here. So Winfield gets tagged. He represents him as well. And he could still end up getting a long-term deal, maybe at $20 million a year is one thing I heard, which would reset the safety market. But with him tagged and not free, McKinney vaulted to the top of the free agent market. And so if the Giants thought they were going to be able to get Xavier closer to the 13, 14, $15 million range, that wasn't going to happen. And so once that transpired and once that domino kind of shifted and fell over, it became a scenario where he was going to hit the market and it was just not going to be a deal that they could match. Like Joe Schoen now has let 2 safeties walk. Like Julian Love 2 years ago went to Seattle.
Yeah, good player.
Right?
Yeah.
He was the Giants' leading tackler that season. And now Love actually overplayed his hand a little bit and got a little less money in Seattle than he would have gotten with the Giants due to kind of an oversaturated safety market that year. But still a key player that you don't let good players walk out the door when you're a bad team. But this is just a position that Joe Schoen now has shown 2 years in a row he doesn't think is worth the money that the rest of the league thinks is worth, frankly. So they let 2 of their good players walk out the door. And that's why, even though I like that Schoen has a defined process and sticks to it, it's just hard to be a good team when you don't have a ton of good players to begin with and you let the talented ones walk out of your building. It's hard to stay relevant.
Yep.
Yeah. How deep, from our perspective, it certainly looked like the Eagles were, Xavier McKinney was their top option at the safety position. How close were the Eagles there from what you heard? And they shifted to CJ Gardner-Johnson, but they had a lot of respect for Xavier McKinney as a potential playmaker.
Yeah, no, they were players, but Green Bay, I think, they were always the front runner. There's connection to Derek Ansley there, who coached McKinney back at Alabama, and along with them, telling them, coming into the free agents negotiating period, that essentially they were going to break the bank and value that position. For McKinney, I don't think it was about Green Bay over Philly. I think it was just about being paid like a top 5 safety. So where the Eagles saw a lot of value there, but they just weren't getting to the Packers level.
All right. Crystal ball time, Mr. Leonard. Who will start the most games at quarterback for the New York Giants this year?
Wow. That's a good pivot there.
Yeah.
Okay. The most starts for the Giants this season at quarterback, I will say JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, JJ. I was going to say Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, or JJ McCarthy, and Pat beat me to it because I think the Giants may take that leap with JJ McCarthy. It's interesting because I think people around the league value JJ McCarthy a heck of a lot more than most fans or draft analysts. And yeah, well, I get it because Michigan played the way Michigan played, and it's hard to say, hey, the 6th pick in the draft, we're limiting him. But is that J.J. McCarthy's fault? What's your sort of early scouting report there?
It's so funny. Yeah, you did describe accurately, I think, the kind of dichotomy that exists between, even just one person's opinion to the next in the league on a quarterback like McCarthy. I think why he fits for the Giants is, okay, if I wanted to win a game right now in the NFL, I'd rather have Michael Penix as the quarterback over JJ. But if I were the Giants, what they want to do, because they're hemmed in by Jones's contract for this season before they can get out of it. So McCarthy, to me, is the guy who has the upside, could use the year of development, sit behind the quarterback, learn. Maybe he jumps in halfway through the year, whatever the case is. Now, that's all well and good to talk about, obviously, in New York and Philadelphia, these places. When you draft a quarterback high, if your starter isn't very good and the kid looks like he's close to ready, he plays, right? Like we know that these guys play. But, it's really interesting because with the Giants trading for Brian Burns, they gave up their higher of this 2 second-round picks they had. And so now they don't have as much ammo to move up the board to go get one if they want one. And there really are still a lot of teams up top in the draft who need quarterbacks who could try to trade over them. Let's say to 4 or 5, even if the top 3 go QB. So will it be a JJ at 6? If not, I don't think they're going to get him because enough of these teams have a high opinion on him. but it could be a guy in the back of the first round in a trade up, or even just using that 47th overall in the second round and doing their own version of a Jalen Hurts pick. Joe Shane even said he's on the record saying this is a good quarterback draft and not just at the top. So, I know Tennessee's, Joe Milton's a guy that they've studied closely. Rattler, I think, has had a really good, kind of spring so far, but he's not necessarily the height that they typically look for. But there are QBs later in the draft that you can look at that the Giants could bring in and develop. But they're in a tough spot at that position, you guys know.
I need your opinion on the Giant defense coming into the year. Last year they had Wink Martindale there, which I'm sure there's still a percentage of Eagle fans who are bummed out that Wink's not going to be here because they love the blitz here in Philadelphia. So there's going to be a certain sea change in New York this year with Wink out.
Yeah.
You like the direction of defense? Adding Brian Burns is going to make your defense better. You know that, but losing Xavier McKinney, not. New DC, new way of playing defense. What's the Giant defense going to look like this year?
It's going to be very different. I think there were times the defense really struggled last year, but I think that the defense was really the only like NFL ready part of their team all season last year. So I think it's not easy. You can't just say, hey, they added Brian Burns and they have this talent and they're going to be able to sustain on that or improve on that. The difference will be more a 3-4 look, a lot more zone in the back than Wink runs, a lot of the press man and the blitzing on third down. This is going to be under Shane Bowen, who comes from the Tennessee Titans and was one of many people that the Giants interviewed and pursued before Bowen ended up getting the job, coming off of all the dysfunction they had during the season on their coaching staff, with Brian Daboll really being on the hot seat coming into the year. But, Brian Burns was a piece that defensive end, whoever they landed there, that was a priority for them because with a 4-man pass rush, you have Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence. You needed an edge over there who was going to take pressure off those guys and get to the quarterback. Obviously, they're not done, but you're right. Losing McKinney's a blow. Bobby Okereke was he's been Shane's best free agent signing in 3 years. He was a really good addition last year, but I think it's going to be tough. Their secondary is very thin. Outside of Deonte Banks, who they drafted in the first round last year, not a lot going on. They did sign the Green Goblin, Jalen Mills.
Yeah, Jalen Mills.
Still going, man. Yeah, amazing. Excited to see him up here.
Great guy too. Great guy.
I've heard that and noticed that from afar. I've never met him, but he's going to be a Swiss Army knife for them. I would imagine based on how he played for the Patriots more recently than his time with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl there. But they have a lot of work to do on the personnel side. I know I kind of keep coming back to that in all these elements, but they're not anywhere close to the team they need to be to sustain success.
Yeah. Well, rush and cover and rush. You could do a lot worse than Thibodeau, Burns, and Dexter Lawrence up front. I mean, those guys are going to make most secondaries look better, at least on paper. So it's a good place to build on foundationally when you have 3 guys like that. Offensive line, I mean, that's the issue. And Saquon didn't have a great statistical season. And, the context is the offensive line was that bad and the quarterback play was that bad.
Yeah.
John Runyon, there's a guy I looked at, said, you know what? Maybe the Eagles should get another John Runyon. Giants got him, paid him a lot. They got the kid from Las Vegas as well. Still a lot of work to do, though, on that offensive line, Pat.
Yeah, for sure. Those were 2 targeted signings. Guard was a priority coming in. I thought they were going to spend bigger on the guard market, but those prices ended up being in the $20 million a year range. The Robert Hunts and Jonah Jacksons of the world. Kevin Dotson re-signing with the Rams. So they pay $10 million a year. They get Runyon. Should end up being their starting right guard. Illuminor, the tackle from Vegas. So what they want to do is give Evan Neal one more shot at winning the right tackle job. Illuminor could then be the swing tackle behind those guys because when Thomas went down last year, they just had nobody to put in behind him who was capable. But I think there's a good chance that eventually you see their line looking like Thomas, Neal at left guard, Schmitz at center, Runyon at right guard, and Illuminor at right tackle. But there's still work to do. They were heavy on the guards in the draft as well. Like the Giants, the Steelers, the Panthers, the Jets, the Jaguars. Like these are teams that are really honed in on offensive guards, even starting back at the Senior Bowl. I think the kid Isaiah Adams from Illinois was a guy that the Giants were, met with twice and were putting up on the board a lot in Mobile, Alabama. So they understand, and Joe Shane knows that that's the priority. Like the Brian Birds was the biggest swing so far, especially from the contract they gave him, which was, I'm still blinking looking at those numbers, but the offensive line it's going to make or break their season.
Let me ask you about, and last question, and we thank you for hopping on, Pat. What happened to Evan Neal? I thought coming out of college that he was going to step in and be a guy who's going to grab a tackle position and hold it for a decade. Yeah. And the only tackle that I can think of that's been a bigger underachiever than him is Mekhi Becton with my Jets, who's absolutely stunk. At least Evan Neal, I think there is still some potential upside. There's none with Beck. What happened?
A few things. So he's a little top heavy. The way they were coaching him early, working him, if you get him leaning forward as a pass rusher, it's over. He was working on that early. Those were some of the technical stuff he was working on, his hands. And then another thing, like talking to some of his, teammates, like Justin Pugh recently was on my podcast, was talking about how even though Neal played some right tackle in college, you remember he played one season at left tackle, one at left guard, one at right tackle, but that he is comfortable on the left. That doesn't mean he can't play on the right, but there is some belief that if he slides just to the left of the line, whether it's guard or tackle, that he would improve a little bit. But the top two are mentally, all the criticism here got to him. And this happened to Andrew Thomas too, before he steadied himself.
Right. He steadied himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
he's
Thomas,
a really good player, and he started slow. So
yeah. And what he was doing, what Andrew was doing when he was younger, and what Neal has done a little bit of too. And this is just young people in general now. And even me on my phone too much, but they're seeing all the criticism of themselves when they have one bad play. And one of the plays in the Miami game kind of tipped the scales, where people were essentially blaming him for something that wasn't necessarily his fault. And that's when he vented, did an interview with Daryl Slater from NJ.com. He, blasted the fans, used that phrase saying, people were flipping hot dogs and hamburgers, criticizing me. I'm paraphrasing, but
right.
That's the mental maturity side that he has been working on. The final piece though, and this is a key one, is the Giants misdiagnosed his ankle injury midway through the season. He gets hurt in Vegas, and initially they were rehabilitating him as if it was a sprain, but it turned out it was a fracture. And so they had him rehab all the way up to being on the field in a uniform, doing drills on the side, starting to ramp up, and things weren't right. And they take him back in and they realize it's a fracture. And so that's why we didn't see him down the stretch of the season. And that set him back in multiple ways as well. So he's been here at the facility, he's been grinding and rehabbing. And so they realize that they owe him one more shot. I think this isn't something specifically someone said to me, but me doing all the reporting on all these details, like they know they owe him like one more fair shot at it.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting. They need to be better on the offensive line if they're going to be a better team than they were last year. Pat Leonard's always fun. Podcast again. Talking ball with Pat Leonard, correct?
Yeah, talking ball. I like the hat. Look at that.
That's
Talking
right.
ball with Pat Leonard.
The big hat.
At PL on NFL. That's like TikTok and Instagram. It's at P Leonard, NYDN. You can read him at the New York Daily News. Tremendous job. He was the first guy I said when Pat says it, I start to take notice, and I still didn't believe it. So I'm offering my mea culpas. Well done. It's good to see you do a tremendous job covering the league and the New York Giants. And yeah, talking ball with Pat Leonard.
Thanks, Jody and John. You guys are great. And I haven't been this excited to see a player's season in a while. Like Saquon on the Eagles, I'm looking forward to this.
Very much so. And if the Eagles get J.J. McCarthy in the draft, we're going to have you right back on and go, you made it happen again, Leonard. We got to give you credit. Pat, a pleasure. Thanks for jumping in with us today.
Take care. Thank you.
Pat Leonard, New York Daily News, here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. You know what we're going to do, put a bow on the show.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services. The first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
All right, Johnny Mac, I want to leave today's show with this. We talked about linebackers, and will the Eagles make a linebacker move, and it could have come today, and we're all over linebackers. Some people have thrown Zach Bond into the mix of Eagle linebackers, a guy they signed a couple days ago who's been more of a special teams ace than he has been a playing from the line of scrimmage linebacker for the Eagles. And I did talk to one guy who knew him, and he said he's more of a defensive end. He's more of an edge guy than he is an actual linebacker. Played both in the Saints defense. They played him with his hand in the dirt and also dropped him back as a linebacker, but he's kind of a tweener. So I don't know if he's actually going to be able to contribute at linebacker for the Eagles. But I had a guy.
That means sand linebacker. So that means more of an edge guy. Yeah, we'll see. I didn't know that. That's good.
That's what a buddy of mine who covers the Saints told me last night. But I did get excited by one caller on WIP last night who said Zach Bond will be the next Ike Reese for the Philadelphia Eagles. Special teams, stud star, plays the little linebacker when need be. Is there any chance that Zach Bond can be the next Ike Reese of the Philadelphia? I've already got their new pass rusher down as the next Jason Babin. Can Zach Bond be the next Ike Reese of the Philadelphia Eagles?
No. And you know why? I don't know anything. I don't know anything, but the game has changed so much since Ike's time.
That's true. Very true.
On special teams, the kickoff more of the linebackers would be more on the kickoff coverage and that kind of stuff than the punt coverage, the gunners. By the way, the Eagles were tremendous gunners last year. The improvement they had on special teams, it was Ringo, it was Josh Jobe mainly. They did a tremendous job. Zach's very good at it. Zach McPherson coming back. You just can't do it. There's no special teams anymore. So, no, you can't.
Damn.
It's not,
Damn, I thought that might be one that I could actually build on and say, hey, remember.
You might be great at it, but if you're returning.
There's going to be a new new kickoff next year, Johnny Mac. They're going to come up with a recreated UFL.
They're going to try and
move till a ball is caught, but there's no long range play. You don't think that's going to be key?
And they might change. We'll see at the league meetings later this month. And they might keep it the same. If they keep it the same, we're talking about 16 returns a year. Yeah, good luck becoming a new Ike Reese with that kind of.
Yeah, there are no kicks to cover. All right, good show today, brother. Appreciate it. You want to do it again tomorrow?
Let's do it.
John McMullen will be back with me, Jody McDonald, here on Bird Street 65 tomorrow in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.